All right, Andrew, we are live. Thank you so much for taking out some time. I appreciate it.
Oh man, it's my pleasure. Thanks, Mike.
No worries. So let's jump right in. Tell us how you got involved scoring the film Winnie-the-Pooh, Blood and Honey. How did that come about?
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of a wild story. It's a fun one. I guess this past year, 2022, like in May or something, I can't remember exactly when, but the movie went massively viral on Twitter and like some screenshots of Pooh and the mask and my now friend Natasha Tassini in the hot tub. Like those pictures went hugely viral and but I had heard about the Winnie the Pooh movie, like a horror movie around the Los Angeles like horror community,
That's
little
cool.
whisperings of it. So when I saw that it was going viral, like right as it was going viral, I looked up Reese Frake Waterfield, the director, on Instagram, and then I or on IMDb, and then I found his Instagram, and I just like I don't always do this, but I think social media is such a great tool for meeting and connecting with new people if you treat it like it was originally intended, social networking instead of social media where you're posting content for people to consume.
Makes sense.
So I messaged him and I think it was he was getting some trolls already just from the announcement of the movie. And so people he was taking screenshots of people's comments on his post saying like you're ruining my childhood and stuff like that. So he took a screenshot of somebody's post and said, "That's what I'm trying to do. Ruin. I'm on a mission to like ruin everyone's childhoods." And I just replied to that Instagram story and I said, "Can I help you do that?" And I think he thought that was really funny. But little did I know, at the time I didn't know this. I did very soon after know, but a good friend of mine, Vince Knight, the director of photography, the cinematographer, was on this movie. And so I guess Reese reached out to him and said, "Hey, it looks like you know Andrew. Like, should I hire him?" And Vince was just like, "Yes."
How sweet is
So
that?
that's how it came to be. And I've loved those guys. We all. I mean, especially then, like when we first started working on it, and you know, before we knew we were getting a theatrical release, we thought maybe wouldn't it be great if this goes on Netflix? Like we had no idea that this would blow up like it did.
Sure.
We were all just like passionately making this low budget indie horror movie for fun. I've seen so many people say things like this is a cash grab, but it couldn't be further from the truth. Like we knew that a lot of people we expected that a lot of people would see it because of how viral it went, but we had no idea this would like blow up like it did and go in theaters and do so well. So
I saw
yeah.
it twice in theaters, man, so I know.
Oh, that's so
It's
awesome.
crazy.
I'm so glad to hear it.
So, the score itself is truly like a character in its own, right? It adds this whole level of horror to, Winnie the Pooh, which you can never really imagine otherwise. So, what was it like kind of turning this lovable character of Winnie the Pooh into like this creepy theme? How did that
Yeah. Well, that's a really fun question. That's a great question. Thanks, Mike. Um, I we started out the first scene that I scored was the opening animation. There's like a little prologue,
right?
and I just really tried to nail a whimsical, childlike wonder that I think the Winnie the Pooh books have. We stayed very far away from Disney's adaptation.
Sure,
Didn't want to touch it with a 25-foot pole.
definitely.
But those books, or specifically that first book, is the one that I reread a couple of times and really got to know. And they have a lot of childlike wonder, and I think that's what A. Milne was trying to put out into the world with his stories. And that's certainly like how we wanted to open the film, and then just twist it into a different direction. So that opening theme, I spent a lot of time on because it was going to be for me, I think, like the nugget of Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh's like relationship, which you don't see as much in this movie, but you will see in future installments of this franchise.
Sure.
So I really wanted to have a solid foundation of their friendship, and so what we landed on, what we came up with, was this like incredibly like magical, whimsical, floaty kind of theme that you then hear later with like low male choir and low cello and like low brass. So you hear it throughout the movie, but it sounds darker later. So just to touch on that for a sec, because I just remembered something that I'd like love to touch on there, and then I'll play an example of it later where it's like more dark and more serious. But there's this theory that it's just a fan theory; it's never been confirmed. But and I did a TikTok about this recently, that John Williams sings his melodies as he writes them, like to words about or even the titles of his movies, like. Da 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 Superman, right? Like the Superman theme from, or like Star Wars. These are the Star Wars, right?
Right.
Like
Sure.
maybe he sets words to his themes, and I've always wanted to try it, so I finally got to try it with Winnie-the-Pooh.
That's sick, dude. I love it.
Let's try to find the. Thank you. Let's try to find the like the darker version of that theme. I know it happens at the very, very end, which I won't like spoil what happens there, but so as you can hear, like in the beginning, it was like bells and flutes and like really like bouncy, high, sparkly instruments. But throughout the movie, and I mean, this is a moment where Christopher is looking at Pooh with a kind of like with pity, like, oh, this used to be my friend, and I look what has happened to him. And so there's a cello, which is the low string instrument behind me, sitting on my couch.
Oh, sweet.
And then a French horn and like low brass and low male choir, which I recorded myself because we didn't have the budget to hire a choir, so I just sang 26 times. But yeah, so all of those like low, dark, kind of broody instruments, and I think the reason I took so much time to develop that theme is because I wanted to make sure that it was malleable, like clay, that I could use throughout the movie. But I hope that answered your question. I mean, there's so many
Oh,
other themes
absolutely.
in
No,
this
it
movie,
definitely
but
did.
that's like the Winnie the Pooh like innocence theme, and then we have his tank malice destructive theme, which is me on the cello like 26 times. So that's like when he's doing something like, crushing somebody's head with sheer brute force. It's like this huge sound. And those are the two themes that are like kind of, fighting back and forth throughout the movie, depending on what's going on inside Pooh's brain.
I love the one scene when he comes running in the forest,
Yeah.
standing there, then all of a sudden he starts running at the girl. And
Yeah.
the score is just like, "Dun, dun," and I'm like, this is freaking insane,
Thank
like
you.
it works so well. Like, it sets up the scene and it makes it scary, it makes it exciting. And I love that particular scene. I think it's amazing.
Thank you. That one on the soundtrack is called Hundred Acre Wood Chipper, because if you've seen the movie, you know what happens.
It's a gory scene. I
Yeah,
love
it's so great. That's a fun. That actor's name is May. I'm blanking on her last name. But because she wasn't in Mexico for the premiere, I didn't get to meet her personally. But we've chatted, and in our group chat, somebody was like complaining that that her shirt comes off in that death scene.
Sure.
And I'm like, watch, like somebody in the group chat, somebody was like, "Did you see the review? Like, somebody's saying that this movie, is misogynistic because her shirt comes off." And May, like in all caps, is like, "That was my idea." It's just like really funny.
See, there you go. Oh, that was great, dude.
Yeah.
So, for you, what would you say was like the most challenging aspect working on this score?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most challenging aspect of this whole movie for all of us, but for me, in my role as composer, the challenging aspect on the score was budget restrictions and time restrictions. And the time restrictions come as a result of budget restrictions. Like on set, for example, when you only have so much money, you only have so much time at a location, you can't afford to do another take for the actors. You get it's like one go at that line, and then we got to move on because we're only here for a day. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the budget limitations stretch across the whole, all the other limitations are a result of budget restrictions. And that's true for actors. That's true for lighting. That's setting up lights. We can't afford time to set up the proper amount of lights. So let's figure out how to guerrilla this to make it look good. That the budget restrictions, I think, go across the whole filmmaking spectrum. But I will say, Vince, the cinematographer, and Scott Jeffrey, the producer, and Reese Frake Waterfield, the writer director, everyone across the board, the whole team knew and still know how to achieve something that looks more expensive than what we have in the time frame that we have. And I think it was inspiring for me to be part of that team and to bring my expertise as a music composer into that, let's just do it. Let's figure out how to do it. Way, that world, that guerrilla filmmaking mindset. For example, when I first saw clips of this movie, I was seeing what's called dailies, as they were doing reshoots, they would send me clips that he was editing together, kind of rough. I had this just fantastic, silly, fun idea that we should have a choir singing in Latin, because when a choir sings Latin, it sounds really serious. Think about the Phantom Menace. At the end of Phantom Menace, that's an epic, really serious sounding musical score, of course, for obvious reasons. But what if it was revealed that John Williams, if you translated the Latin from that Duel of the Fates, what if it was ham and cheese? What if the words were ham and cheese sandwich? You know what I mean? So I said, why don't we should have a choir singing Blood and Honey in Latin. And some people will look it up. Some people will just ignore it. But won't it be hilarious if people look it up and Sanguis et Mel translates to Blood and Honey?
Dude,
and
that's so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I said that to Therese. I was like, we got to have a choir, a full 75-piece choir, singing Blood and Honey. And he was like, that sounds expensive. So instead, I just sang it all myself. I'm trying to find a clip of it. Let me see.
Yeah, man. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it works.
Let's see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, thank you. Here's the Silly Old Bear is the one on the soundtrack. One of the instances of. And then, of course, there's the opening. This is one of the themes of the movie. So yeah, once I decided, hey, I never budget restrictions to be the reason why we can't do something. Like, let's just figure out how to do it. So instead of hiring a choir for a day or, an afternoon and recording all the choir parts, I said, I'll just do it myself. We'll do it. It'll be a male choir instead of like a men's choir instead of like a full choir with both ranges of voices. And that'll make it sound dark and gothic. And I'll just record it like 26 times in like as many voices as I can. You go like, Sanguis, and then you go like, Sanguis, like try to make it sound like different people, and then stick it all together and put a bunch of reverb on it. And only people who know that it's me. Otherwise, it just sounds like a choir,
Oh, dude, I'm not gonna lie. That makes that scene so much cooler.
Thank you.
So much cooler, man. I love it. So, switching gears a little bit, how does kind of Winnie the Pooh differ from working on the score for Deathcember? I'm also a big fan of that film as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they were very different projects, both in the horror realm. But Deathcember was an anthology, as you know, 25 short films, one for each day leading up to Christmas, an advent calendar. You could feasibly like press play and then pause like once a day until Christmas if you wanted to watch like a 5-minute short every day. I actually think they should release like a version of that is like a series, like chapters. Yeah. So you could just like on Amazon or something, you could just like press next on the next day. I think that'd be cool. But because of that, I didn't score the whole movie. It's an international anthology, so it's
Right.
filmmakers and writers and people from all over the world. But there were, I think, like 4, maybe 5. I can't remember exactly the number, but 5 or 4 of them were from LA, and I knew a lot of them. So it was, they all had a meeting basically, and they were all like, we should share crew. We should try to cut down the costs, because essentially everybody got the same amount of money, a small amount of money, to do a 5-minute short film, around 5-minute short film.
Right.
And that was like every director, every group got the same amount. So the LA filmmakers were like, let's try to pool our resources. We can stretch, if we pool our resources, we can stretch the budgets a little bit. And so that's kind of how I came on board, is that they were all talking about like, maybe we should use the same DP. We can share, right? So part of that conversation was me coming on as a composer. And I think, a couple of them already had friends or composers that they have worked with, or friends that they work with in the past. Like Amalia worked with she's worked with this composer a bunch of times, and he's super talented. And then someone named Michael Verratti didn't need a composer, because his takes place. His is the second one, I think, or the third one. It takes place in the shopping, like the store.
Sure.
If you remember.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I did score. I ended up scoring 2 of the LA segments. The one for Sam Weinman called "Milk and Cookies," and then the one for Vivian Vaughn called "A Christmas Miracle," starring with Barbara Crampton and Clark Wolf.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, thanks. And I thought that would be it, and then the producers of the entire anthology reached out to me because they really liked my music for both of those, and they asked if I wanted to do the main theme and the closing credits and then the interstitial like transitions between each short film. So that was kind of like let's go all hands on deck. Let's start this movie with a bang. And I proposed to them hiring an orchestra for the opening credits and the closing credits. And we hired the Budapest Symphony Orchestra, which had at that point worked on Get Out and Parasite. At that point, like very recently, they worked on Parasite and some like Star Wars animated shows and stuff. They do a lot of recording for film scores. So it was really cool to work with them. I got a nice team of people together, because when it's like a big orchestra thing, it needs like a team. So I think to answer your question, the major difference between working on Deathcember and working on Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and I won't. It's that like this isn't necessarily like a good thing because I'm very proud of my work on Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and I think not having a team and doing it all by myself is part of that pride. But on Deathcember, I had a team and we had an orchestra, and it was a totally different type of affair in terms of like the process of writing that and recording that and having a team behind you. Whereas like in Winnie the Pooh, it was like only me, and it was me in my studio playing as many instruments as I can. I have a, doubling and layering violin parts and cello parts and choir parts and playing the trumpet and the clarinet and just trying to make it sound as real as possible under the budget limitations. I mean, they were like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey was really like an all hands on deck. Let's make this and make it as good as we possibly can for the limitations that we have. And I'll just say, like, both experiences were valuable. I loved working on Winnie the Pooh, and I loved working on Deathcember. They were just different experiences of, like, the process of writing and not having a team on Winnie the Pooh, but having a team on Deathcember. So.
And what do you enjoy most about the horror genre?
The thing I enjoy most about the horror genre is that it's like heightened emotion. I really love scoring movies that are heightened emotions. And I mean, I love watching movies that are very real and realistic, like dramas that have realism. But when you're working on a movie that has like a heightened sense of emotion, like horror, or even a family movie, like an animation or something, those have like heightened senses of reality. Like I'm thinking of that Tintin movie, where like he's like flying through, on a motorcycle, like flying through the air or something like, or an action movie. Like an action movie would be something that is like a heightened, it's why we go to the movies for a lot of times. We want that heightened reality, that heightened sense of emotion. And horror just like takes it and turns it up like 4 more degrees, And I love working on horror because you can make bold choices, and it feels like directors and audiences reward you for making bold choices. And so I think as a genre of film, I think horror is always pushing the boundaries of what film can achieve and the stories that we can tell. And the people who don't watch horror, like, don't get it. But that's what we're doing. So I really love working on horror movies for that reason.
That's awesome, man.
And nobody ever tells me to turn the music down in a horror movie, so.
It's true. It's true, man. That's definitely true. So, all right. Well, we got time for one more. Let me see. Tell us about your upcoming projects, and do you have any chance that to know or not if you'll be working on the second film, Winnie the Pooh 2?
Well, I'll answer that one first. We're definitely talking about it. It's like,
Cool.
we're making plans. Nothing is ever final in the entertainment industry until the ink is dry. And even then, it's like not final until the movie is out. So I want to just be, my answer to that question is I certainly intend to. We all plan on working on it together again. Because I'd love that. I mean, I think we have some really rich, musical thematic material here to expand upon in the sequel, and God will, if there's a third one, even further expanding on those themes. So I certainly intend to, and I know that we have all, as a team, talked about it. My involvement on the second one again, but you never know if something were to happen. For any number of reasons, like a family emergency or something like that.
Sure.
But I certainly intend to.
Cool, man.
And in terms of the next projects,
What else you got
I've
going
got some exciting horror films coming up, but that I can't speak on yet because, like I said, they're not. It's not. Nothing's ever final till it's final. But I did just finish working on a really fun, exciting short film called The Hanover Incident.
Okay.
And in January, we recorded with the same orchestra. I hired the same orchestra again, the Budapest Symphony Orchestra,
Sweet.
and got together the team from Deathcember again. You know, my orchestrator Oscar Senin, who was like the lead orchestrator on the No Time to Die, and my pal Phil McGowan, who is a score mixer on like Ant-Man and the Wasp or Ozarks. He does a lot of Netflix shows, and just it's a delight to work with them again. I haven't worked with them really all together again since December, which was a couple of years ago. But to bring them all back on, and it was really cool. So a couple of days ago, we just posted the video from the recording session of the orchestra. So that's on my YouTube, and
Oh, that's
people
sweet.
can check that out. It's about 8 minutes of music, and it's just fun. It's fun to watch. Like, I edited it myself. I put together the footage and tried to do it in a way that would show you what sound you're hearing when you're hearing it, right? So
Cool.
when there's like a trumpet part, we see the trumpet playing the trumpet part, but then it switches to the violins, and you're like, what are they doing with their bow? And so I'm not necessarily trying to make it educational, but trying to make it really engaging for people to watch an orchestra play in that way, like a very pointed, like, look at this sound and how they're making it, and look at this part. And this instrument is playing this sound that you're hearing right now, and
It's amazing.
switching the camera, switching the angles.
That's really cool, man. I love it. Well, I look forward to that as well, and we'll keep our fingers crossed for number 2, Winnie the Pooh 2.
Yeah.
Sure.
So far so good. It's coming for 2024. We are in the process, and I say we as in I'm not really part of it, but I get updates from Reese and about what he's thinking and plot wise and stuff like that, and
So
it's fun to see it all coming together.
I can't wait, man. Well, listen, thanks again, and I appreciate it, and best of luck.
Thank you. Great to meet you, Mike.